Welcome to the first AIAA Aerospace Perspectives webinar. We are excited to bring this program to our community as a new platform for content that is led by AIAA corporate partners. This event program will explore unique views and insights from industry leaders that are working actively in our community to shape the future of aerospace. AIAA and our members are working together every day to lead humanity beyond planet Earth, to define the next century of flight, and to create the future world of our dreams. AIAA brings together 30,000 aerospace professionals and their organizations to accelerate our progress towards these ambitious goals. Ascend, powered by AIAA, will build upon today's discussion and others to address the challenges of achieving our dreams in space. Thank you for joining us on this unique mission and for connecting with each other to advance our industry. We are thrilled to join with Dynetics to take a behind-the-scenes look at the Human Landing System, a key part of the NASA Artemis program. Today's webinar will feature an in-depth discussion with industry experts about the sustained human presence on the moon. With a truly exceptional lineup of speakers, we can't wait to get today's session started. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dan, for getting us started today. I'd like to take a moment as we stand here amongst Dynetics Human Lander System to thank everyone that's taken the time to virtually join us as we take a look at the importance of exploration and utilization. You know, when I joined Dynetics in 2009 as the Director of Space Technologies, I had just made the jump from a 20-year career with NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. We are honored to partner with NASA and could not be more proud to work with this group of people that are going to return the man and the first woman to the moon. For over a decade, Dynetics right here in the Rocket City has worked with this community to provide affordable, agile, and innovative solutions. Our long-standing partnership with NASA includes several successful programs such as the Fast, Affordable Science and Technology Satellite, FAStsat, that we helped Marshall put into orbit in 2010, the Laser Air Monitoring System that we're delivering for the Orion spacecraft, and the top of the rocket, the Universal Stage Adapter for NASA's Space Launch System. Now the Dynetics Human Landing System will enable us to explore the moon as we prepare for destinations beyond. Today you're going to hear from former NASA astronauts as they dissect the crew-centric Dynetics Human Landing System design. Then our Vice President of Space Systems, Kim Doring, will moderate a panel with industry leaders as they discuss exciting opportunities created by a sustained human presence on the moon. You'll see that we have strategically assembled a dynamic team who will bring strength and expertise to the design and the development of our lander. And you'll also hear from some of those companies later on in the session. I hope that you're going to find today's conversation engaging and informative. For more information on the steps Leidos and Dynetics are making in space exploration, be sure to visit us at leidos.com or dynetics.com. Now, please help me welcome my good friend Kathy Larini with the Dynetics HLS team as she walks us through a program overview of the team's plans and their progress.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, my name is Kathy Larini, and I'm excited to be a member of the Dynetics Human Landing System team. As one of NASA's commercial partners for lunar exploration, we've been preparing our strategy for maximizing the utility of our lander to meet NASA's mission needs, but also to attract other users who wish to explore and work on the moon. This work helps us identify strategic partners and potential customers. By doing this, we hope to create commercial opportunities for our lander, but also contribute to realizing NASA's vision for sustainable lunar exploration and utilization. I'm going to share with you our vision and give you some insights into what we are doing to make it a reality. We believe that our lander and our team will make an important contribution to sustainable human space exploration and kick off an exciting period that leads to people living and working on Mars. That said, our vision centers on understanding and engaging all the stakeholders whose continued support will make lunar exploration sustainable. We think this is really important and something we need to do to make Mars missions a reality. Our innovative design includes features which are crew-centric, enhance crew safety, and mission success. We prioritize these things because at the end of the day, the lander's role is to deliver people and large cargo to the lunar surface. Doing this cost-effectively and safely enables all sorts of important activities that will come from NASA's critical leadership on the Artemis program. We're making good progress with our lander design. You'll see more later in this program. We have just concluded a major review milestone with NASA, where they had the chance to review our plans, requirements, and design in detail. This review is a really important step. But before sharing the vision, I want to talk about the key principles which guide us. So we feel it is essential to adhere to these principles because they will enable us to understand and work with key stakeholder groups and choose partners wisely. All of this, as I said before, is designed to promote sustainable lunar exploration. So let me walk through the principles quickly. First, grow the space economy. Private investment in space startups is increasing year after year. Most of these investments are related to launch to and utilization of low Earth orbit. Increasingly, they focus on human activities in low Earth orbit. These investments drive innovative technologies and capabilities that make access to space cheaper and use of space more widespread. As NASA expands to the area around the moon, there will be numerous opportunities for commercial services. As we learn more about lunar resources, this will open up the opportunity to expand the space economy even further. Advancing science. Pursuit of new knowledge and scientific discovery will excite people and encourage the study of science and mathematics. It will lead to insights which make human exploration of the solar system more imperative. Ensure U.S. leadership. Space is a strategic domain, and now more than ever, U.S. leadership is critical. As Scott Pace likes to say, the rules of the road will be written by those that are there. To be there requires us to develop affordable and reusable capabilities so that the nation's civil space budget can go further. We are committed to this. Embrace international partnerships. It's not just that human space exploration is too expensive for one nation to go it alone. Apollo showed us that human achievement in space exploration excites people around the world. International space agencies have capabilities and expertise which, when employed, will increase the benefits and make mission architectures more robust. We're excited to have the Italians on our team and know that this cooperation will lead to broad engagement opportunities in Europe and beyond. And lastly, prepare for missions to Mars. We need to make sure that our investments in lunar exploration are real down payments for the technologies and capabilities needed for Mars. The missions that we enable with our lander, human and cargo missions, will require increasing capabilities. And so let's make technology decisions based on what moves us closer to Mars exploration. So with these guiding principles, we focus so far on two main areas, science and lunar resources, and I'll talk about both of those. The international science community has done a great job of reaching consensus on science priorities. Much credit for this goes to the Lunar Exploration Analysis Group, the LEAD. They've published a lunar exploration roadmap and provided forums and activities to keep the international science community communicating and integrated. In the US, the Decadal Survey outlines priorities for science missions. These guide the investments of the NASA Science Mission Directorate. International priorities, which include the US and international and a number of agencies around the world, are captured in products generated by the International Space Exploration Coordination Group, products like the Global Exploration Roadmap and its science white paper. So a widely used quote sums it up really nicely. Science enables exploration, and exploration enables science. This means that the presence of humans enables lots of good science, which might not make the cut due to limited space agency science budgets. We'll talk about some of the exciting missions we'd like to help realize that not only represent great science, but also advance human exploration goals. Let's talk about lunar resources. Our lander is unique in that we need lunar fueling to accomplish our mission. In the next couple years, we will take in-space cryogenic propellant refueling technologies from the lab to TRL-10 and operational. Having these technologies will enable cislunar fuel depots, and we will be engaging partners to make them a reality. We'd like to be able to buy propellant from a commercial depot around the moon that also serves other customers, such as other human or robotic landers. Before long, resources will be available on the lunar surface. NASA is already starting the water ice prospecting effort with its commercial lunar payload services missions, or CLPS missions, including the Astrobotic Viper mission. Viper is a payload that will also carry a technology demonstration for extracting and processing oxygen from the lunar regolith. We are really excited about this technology and want to find partners to help realize a liquid oxygen plant on the surface. Having the ability to fill our liquid oxygen tanks on the lunar surface could enable new mission classes, like hopping around to other parts around the moon to accomplish some key science objectives. So how will this unfold? 2021 will see the first CLPS mission to the lunar surface. Two companies, Astrobotic and intuitive machines will take a host of NASA and commercial payloads to the lunar surface. Astrobotic is a partner on the Dynetics team and the first CLIPS provider to win 2 NASA contracts. They are leading the way in lunar commercial services and leading our team's efforts to create commercial payload opportunities. In 2024, you'll see humans back on the moon, including the first woman. Our lander will be launched from Earth on a ULA Vulcan Centaur. 2 additional Vulcan Centaurs will deliver the needed fuel. Then we'll pick up the crew at the Orion or the Gateway and descend to the lunar surface. We think having an aggressive goal, such as landing by 2024, and the competition that NASA has set up in this program, will drive progress towards this exciting milestone. The Dynetics lander team is working hard to be the lander that enables the first historic mission. Starting in 2026, you'll see the capability to take 4 crew to the surface of the moon with reusable landers. As NASA and its international partners develop other infrastructure capabilities, such as pressurized rovers, the crew can stay longer and do more things on the surface. Here you see 1 pressurized rover has already been delivered, and the second one of a different design is being delivered by our reusable lander. That lander has already been to the surface of the moon, and it delivered an international suite of medium-sized rovers like the ones you see on the far right. Those medium-sized rovers will build on the information obtained by Viper. For this mission, we envision landing and extending a ramp that lets the multiple medium-sized rovers just easily exit and begin collecting the information needed to build those water ice resource maps. These maps are what will be needed to encourage private sector investment in the collection and processing of lunar resources. Maybe one of those rovers will even go into a permanently shadowed region and collect a sample to be returned to the crew for return back to Earth. So after that mission to put the medium-sized rovers on the surface, our lander had returned to cislunar space, where it picked up that second pressurized rover, which was delivered directly or co-manifested with Orion on SLS Block 1B. Our cargo lander gently puts the second pressurized rover on the surface and returns to cislunar space for the next mission. By 2030, you see Artemis Base Camp has become a reality. Crews are spending longer times on the lunar surface and taking advantage of lunar resources. You see the habitation systems that allow them to stay for longer periods of time, and test technologies needed for the long stays for Mars, and support the activities on the moon. You see refueling capabilities both in lunar orbit and on the lunar surface. You see a mature gateway, an essential element of the architecture that promotes reusability of landers, spacesuits, and other things. These foundational capabilities, enabled by NASA with private sector investment, are not only demonstrating key technologies needed for lunar and Mars settlement, but they provide the infrastructure needed for the lunar economy to grow. So let's look closer at some of these exciting missions. Returning people back to the moon is a dream of people around the world, and it's driving innovations which improve life on Earth. Imagine the impact those images will have to inspire people. Returning to the moon with the first woman will allow us to start a new chapter in exploration and learn a lot about how the Earth-Moon system evolved, and perhaps how it will evolve. As ESA's David Parker likes to say, we've been to the moon a few times, but it's like we've only visited the gift shop. There's a whole lot more to learn by going back. We are really excited about the lunar far side science activity, and in particular the South Pole Lake and Basin. Here you can see a distributed radio telescope deployed and able to look further into space than any other space telescopes because of the unique vantage point. We can envision a cargo mission of our lander delivering this telescope and another rover that focuses on the interesting geological science in this region. Someday a crewed mission may arrive to perform telescope maintenance and return scientifically interesting samples. Having a liquid oxygen production plant near Artemis Base Camp at the South Pole will enable a lot of new mission classes for our lander and for smaller landers, CLIPS landers. We'd like to see a refuelable cargo version of our lander able to visit multiple places around the moon and deliver scientific rovers or collect samples for return to Earth, as you can see in the far right side of this image. I hope this presentation gave you some insight into the work we're doing to establish and expand on our vision for sustainable lunar exploration. This is not just a presentation, but it summarizes some of the elements of our plan. We're excited about the future and all the benefits that will come from returning to the moon. That was a look to the future. Now we'll shift to some key activities going on right now. We have several former NASA astronauts supporting our design effort, They are engaged with our Human Systems Integration team and NASA to refine our lander design and be sure human factors and crew considerations are taken into account, and explain how it plays an important role in refining requirements in our design concept.
Greetings from SNC's Mission Control Room in Louisville, Colorado. I'm Janet Cavandi, and I'm just so excited to be talking to you today about the possibility of putting the first woman on the surface of the moon. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up being able to look at the brilliant night skies and look at the moon as a child, and I honestly did dream about going to the moon at some point in my life. Unfortunately, it probably won't happen for me, but it will happen very soon for some other very fortunate female. Growing up, there were, I watched my heroes. There were a lot of male test pilots who were the NASA astronauts of the day, very talented gentlemen, really brave individuals, but there really weren't any opportunities for women at that time. Growing up, I always set my sights on becoming an astronaut. I finally was able to do that, and now we're finally to the point where we can go back to the moon again and send the first female there. Hopefully in the future, we'll always have the ability to take America with us to the surface of the moon to represent our diverse culture and our diverse population, and also bring our international partners. So we're really looking forward to this new and exciting phase.
Hi, I'm Jim Dutton, call sign MASH. I was the pilot on STS-131 and now have the privilege of joining the Team Dynetics working on the Human Landing System. With me today is Lee Archambault.
Thanks, Mash. My name is Lee Archambault, call sign Brew. I'm a veteran of Space Shuttle missions STS-117 and 119, and today I proudly represent Sierra Nevada Corporation on Team Dynetics.
Our team is over 25 companies in 17 different states, as well as Tazi from Italy. And what you see behind us is the mock-up of the Dynetics Human Landing System. So the Dynetics Human Landing System is designed to carry the first humans back to the moon. And as you see behind us, this is a mock-up that we created for design and development purposes. This very week, we've had a team out here doing human-in-the-loop testing of the window layouts and the design of the displays and controls. And that's the kind of advantage we get from having this mock-up available to us. So the vehicle itself, as you can see, the primary structure behind is called the alpaca, and that structure is what really is responsible for carrying the crew module down to the surface. There's two main propellant tanks that carry the fuel for the latter part of the landing phase, as well as the ascent back. And you can see that there's 4 main engines on each side, the landing gear. And then as we come across, what you don't see, because of this mock-up having primarily a crew purpose, are the solar arrays, the communications antennas built by Maxar that aren't shown here, but will be on top of the vehicle, as well as a lot of the avionics and thermal control system. And now I'll turn it over to Brew to tell us a little bit about the crew module.
Thanks, Mash. Our crew module is built by Thales Alenia, who's had a long history of developing pressurized structures on the International Space Station. So it is designed in this mission, in this role, to house and comfortably accommodate up to 4 astronauts to live and work on the surface of the moon. It also includes the necessary workstations to fly the vehicle during critical phases of flight. So with that, why don't we have a look inside?
Let's do it.
So we'll start here on the back end of the crew module. This is the habitation area. Again, an area that is built and designed for up to 4 astronauts to live and work while on the surface of the moon. Here they'll eat, they'll sleep, they'll drink, and they'll prepare for their EVAs. In this mock-up, we have volumetric representations of a lot of our different systems. Our Paragon life support system, you can see this volumetric representation can be moved around as we decide on the final placement for these systems in our architecture. It's well lit. Dynetics provides the lighting for the crew module. And just forward of the habitation area is the workstations for flying the vehicle. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what the flight stations look like.
So let's talk a little bit about how we are going to fly the lunar landing in this vehicle. As you can see, we've got the controls and displays centered around the window field of view so the crew can maintain optimal situational awareness there. We're going to lower the vehicle down into a 100-kilometer circular orbit around the moon. When we're ready to start the landing, we will execute a burn over the north pole of the moon for about 10 seconds. That will lower our orbit to about 15 kilometers. Once we start to approach the south pole, we'll begin a continuous braking burn that will last for about 9 minutes, and then we'll start into the landing phase, which Brew will tell you about.
That landing phase begins at the end of our braking burn, at which point the vehicle will begin to pitch over. When the vehicle pitches over, the landing zone will come into the field of view through the out the window views. And this will be approximately 5 kilometers from the landing zone at that point. And from there on in, all the way through touchdown, we fully expect the crew will have an unobstructed view of the landing zone, as I say, through touchdown. There will be a point in time as we get close to the landing zone where the landing zone disappears below the field of view of the windows, but at that point the crew will maintain a complete visual on the landing zone through a state-of-the-art sensor suite that will allow it to persist through the harsh lunar environment of dust and sun glare.
So as we come down towards the final landing, the automation will allow the crew to just maintain situational awareness on the landing site and any kind of obstructions or slope issues. And then they can make minor redesignations of the landing site, allowing the vehicle to fly there. Or if they're more comfortable, they'll be able to take manual control and actually fly the translation and descent profile manually down to the surface. So Brew, am I going to get this landing?
Mash, I think you have to have done it before to do it again, so this one's all mine.
Wow. Now that Brew got us down on the surface safely, it's time to go out and take advantage of this opportunity to do science and exploration on the moon. So this is actually the area where we would get into our suits, open the hatch, and then be able to egress just roughly 1.5 meters down to the surface to begin our EVA activities. So very simple for us to get there.
Mash, I assumed you wanted to go out first?
One of the most important aspects of our Dynetics Human Lunar Lander is the delivery of astronaut crews and their spacesuits. Their spacesuit, the Exploration EMU, or XEMU, is designed by NASA for exploration, with provisions to allow the astronaut inside to walk, climb, and explore on the moon's surface, something we haven't done in almost 50 years. The spacesuit life support system is designed to provide plenty of oxygen to breathe and a comfortable internal pressure, temperature, and humidity while the astronauts are working. The XEMU features a rear hatch that allows easy entry into the spacesuit. The XEMU also features special shoulder sizing features that ensure a great fit for both men and women. All the lessons learned from past spacesuits have been or are being incorporated in the XEMU. After setting foot on the surface, the crews will retrieve tools and science experiments and begin their scientific and exploration work. The crews will be bending, raking, picking up samples, bagging and marking them, getting into rovers, climbing up hills, and most exciting, exploring for water ice at the lunar South Pole. They will be performing field geology in one of the most fantastic areas imaginable. Dynetics will be working with NASA to design ways to clean the suits after each moonwalk, to reduce dust in the cabin and keep spacesuits operating in tip-top shape. The Dynetics lander will have provisions for cleaning and refurbishing the spacesuits for up to 5 moonwalks on the lunar surface. We have never been closer to the U.S. returning to the lunar surface than we are right now. With the Orion and the Space Launch System underway, the Dynetics Human Lunar Lander represents the capstone capability to descend safely to the lunar surface and enable a new era of solar system exploration for our astronauts and the U.S.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kim Doring, and I'm the Vice President of Space Systems at Dynetics. I'm pleased to be here with our distinguished panelists. We've assembled a panel of leading voices shaping the future of lunar exploration and utilization. You've seen the Dynetics vision for sustainable lunar exploration, and now we want to discuss those activities and the benefits which will come as we send women and men back to the moon, and then further into the solar system. We're pleased to have this opportunity to share the work that Team Dynetics is doing on the Human Landing System, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today. I'm going to ask the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and then I'll pose some questions. We'll open it up to questions from the viewers. There's a Q&A button on your screen, which you can click to ask a question. You can also upvote from the screen. So let's get started. Panelists, I'm going to ask you to briefly describe what you do and give an indication of what you bring to today's discussion. We're going to go in alphabetical order. So Jack Burns, let's start with you.
Thank you. I'm Jack Burns, and I'm a professor of astrophysics and planetary sciences at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and also Vice President Emeritus for Academic Affairs and Research. I've had a long career in advocacy for lunar science, going back 35 years. I've previously served on the NASA Advisory Council as chair of the Science Committee, and more recently, Steve Cook and I served on the transition team for NASA several years ago.
Thank you, Jack. Really glad to have you here today. Dan Hendrickson, please tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, good afternoon. It's great to be here with you today. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate. My name is Dan Hendrickson. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Astrobotic, and we're a lunar logistics company based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can kind of think of us as a shipping service for cargo to the moon. And to that end, we have 3 robotic lunar missions on the books. We have 2 lunar lander missions and 1 robotic rover mission between now and 2023. And we've captured a significant market share of the lunar delivery payload market, and we're really excited to be applying this expertise to assist the Dynetics Human Lander System to make commercial service available on their lander. We think this will be a crucial element to making Artemis and the Human Lander program sustainable, and we're excited to bring that to bear for the team. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. We're glad to have you here today and glad to have you on the Dynetics HLS team. Georgiana Kramer, please tell us about yourself.
Hi, thank you for having me here. My name is Georgiana Kramer. I'm a senior research scientist at the Planetary Science Institute, which is based in Tucson, Arizona. I have been a planetary scientist for 20 years, and my focus has been on the moon for 15 of those years, for the most part. I'm an advocate for commercial space exploration. I have been for about maybe 7 years now. I see it as the most viable option for us to actually go back to the moon and have a sustained presence on the moon. So I'm really glad to be here to talk about that.
Thank you, Georgiana. We're glad to have you today. Mark Peller, please tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Kim. So I am the Vice President of Major Development at United Launch Alliance. First of all, United Launch Alliance is a premier launch provider serving the national security space, civil, and commercial markets with a long history with the Atlas and Delta launch vehicles. My responsibilities in major development, think of that as product development. So responsible for developing upgrades to our current launch systems, as well as developing our new launch system, Vulcan Centaur, which hopefully we'll get an opportunity to talk a little bit about more this morning. ULA has a rich history of supporting lunar exploration. We have launched LRO, LCROSS, and GRAIL to the moon on the Atlas and Delta vehicles. Those provided data that has been critical to improving our understanding of the moon and really laying the foundations for the return to the moon and Artemis. And we're really excited about the opportunity to continue that and do that with Vulcan Centaur supporting the Dynetics HLS.
Thank you, Mark. We're glad to have you, and we're excited to launch on your Vulcan Centaur. Alan Stern, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure can. Thank you for having me here, and I'm excited to be a part of this. I'm a planetary scientist, a former NASA executive, and a vice president in the space division of the Southwest Research Institute. Southwest Research Institute is a very large research and development organization, a large nonprofit with almost 3,000 employees, over 400 of whom are in the space division, where I'm a VP. Although I think as a planetary scientist, I'm better known for my work in the outer solar system and the exploration of Pluto and the Kuiper Belt. I've been a lunar scientist since the beginning of my career. In fact, my first research paper was in lunar science, and I've made contributions in the study of lunar volatiles, remote sensing of the lunar surface, and studies of the lunar atmosphere. I've also been privileged to be a principal investigator on the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter mission that NASA launched in 2009 and which continues to deliver new results from lunar orbit even today, more than a decade after launch. Finally, I'll just point out that I am the former two-time board chairman and a current board member of the Commercial Spaceflight Federation. That's the largest industry association of commercial spaceflight corporations in the world, with almost 90 corporations and universities under our wing. Thank you.
Thank you. We're really fortunate to have such a fantastic panel here today with broad experience and broad knowledge, and we appreciate the audience turning in today to join us in this discussion. So the first question today is for Alan, George, and Jack. It's been said, and Kathy Larini quoted this today, that exploration enables science and science enables exploration. Tell us about the science that will be enabled by Artemis and why it's significant. Let's start with you, Alan.
Okay, happy to do that. Well, I am super excited about the return of human beings to the lunar surface, because even today, more than 50 years after Apollo 11, there's no substitute for what humans can accomplish as field scientists and explorers on the surface of the moon. Human capabilities far outstrip what robotics can do today. And so what Artemis is going to do for us is give us the ability to go into warp drive, if you will, with regard to the study of lunar geology, lunar geochemistry, lunar geophysics. And by extension, we're going to learn about how small planets operate. We're going to learn about how to operate on the surface to go to Mars. And we're going to be able to do other kinds of science from the moon. With humans, we'll be able to set up astronomical observatories on the lunar far side to do radio science, which I think Jack Burns, who's one of the world's experts, is going to tell us more about. We'll be able to study the Earth in new ways. And one example that I'm very excited about is that the lunar surface is certainly the repository of ancient rocks from the surface of the early Earth that were brought there as meteorites, the same way that we collect lunar meteorites here on the Earth. So by going to the moon, we'll be able to study our own planet's ancient past. So from astrophysics to lunar science to planetary science, and even to the study of the Earth's magnetosphere and observations of the Earth's atmosphere as a globe, I think the Artemis capabilities are going to open a new golden era, not just for lunar science, but for all of planetary science, Earth science, and astrophysics.
Great. Thank you, Alan. George, can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the science that will be enabled by Artemis?
Absolutely. Actually, picking up on what Alan just said about going back and looking at the Earth as a globe, in light of the the news break that came about phosphine discovered in the atmosphere of Venus, we don't really know what the Earth looks like if it were like out there in this, in the solar system or much further away from us. We don't know what it would actually look like if we looked at a planet and saw evidence of life. And this is obviously the best place to do that. So being able to look back at Earth from a distance like that is very important. Another thing I do want to stress is that we have learned so much about the entire solar system, and especially Earth, and of course, especially the moon too, because we went there and there were 6 manned missions who sampled material over a diverse area. Because they were manned, there were rocks and soil samples that were picked up that no robotic mission would have ever thought to look at or cared to pick up, wouldn't have been identified. So we have a wealth of information, and that information about the moon has gone on to tell us about so much more about the Earth, about differentiation into like crust, mantle, core, and exactly what goes on there. And one thing I do want to stress also is that the Apollo missions, they went to 6 small isolated locations covering an area of even less than half the area of the continental United States. It's like the equivalent of going to like the parks of 6 small suburbs and picking up some like decorative rocks and some shrubbery and bringing it back and saying, oh, we know everything about the Earth now. But really those rocks, they were probably transported there by a landscaping crew, so they don't come from that area. And that's a lot like what happened on the moon and some of the samples that were picked up. We think we know where they came from, but we're not exactly really sure yet. So now we don't know anything really about the poles and the far side, except from orbital missions and one landed mission finally to the far side. The first Artemis mission is going to the South Pole. This is very exciting. We don't know what about the water that's there. We don't know what form it's in. We don't know how deep it is. And we are going to go there and find out that information, which will then inform so much more about the rest of the solar system.
Well, thank you, George. Jack, how about your thoughts?
Well, Kim, I think what we've lacked for probably the last 50 years in terms of lunar science is really accessibility to the moon. With the exception of just a few examples, it's been very difficult to get to the moon. This is changing now with CLIPS, and it'll change even further. It'll be turbocharged with the Human Lander System, because we'll have a number of opportunities for ride shares to the moon to be able to place CubeSats, small sats, and then of course experiments onto the surface. Very importantly, the Human Landing System, like the Dynetics system, is going to also change our conception of what we can put onto the surface. The CLIPS program, it's great moving forward, but it's limited to 50 kilogram payloads. With things like Dynetics, you'll be able to put metric tons worth of scientific equipment onto the moon. So as was mentioned earlier, our radio telescope plans to put a low frequency array onto the surface are going to be enabled by the Human Landing System and transporting that kind of mass. It will be a complete game changer. At the same time, when we're on the surface and we're beginning to deploy our radio telescope arrays, we're going to be moving forward things like telerobotics and construction onto the surface. And being able to apply those more generally to ISRU and to other experiments, then that's going to enable exploration as well. Even to the point we're working with a company, a startup company in Houston, Lunar Resources, that is looking at manufacturing antennas and solar panels using lunar regolith. So doing that to motivate science, to enable science, is also going to further enable other activities, exploration activities on the moon. So it's a really exciting game changer that I think we're looking forward to.
Well, thank you. We sure have our work cut out for us, don't we? A lot of science, a lot of exploration. We need to hurry up and get up there. And I think, as we said at the beginning, sustainability and building a presence that can explore all of the questions that you've brought up and develop all the capabilities is very exciting, very challenging, and very important. My next question is for Dan. Dan, Astrobotics is the only commercial lunar payload service, or CLIPS, as we heard a minute ago, team to have been awarded 2 NASA missions. Congratulations. Do you see the CLIPS program has stimulated interest in lunar science in the U.S. and abroad?
Well, thank you, Kim. Appreciate the warm words there. Maybe for the audience's benefit, just to give a little bit of background on CLIPS, Commercial Lunar Payload Services. It's an end-to-end delivery service that's being provided to NASA for their payloads. And I think what's really remarkable about this program is that while it's been instituted over the last 2 years and it's really been getting going, and as Kim mentioned, we've been awarded 2 opportunities to deliver NASA payloads. What's amazing is that there's actual organic market demand for lunar payload delivery outside of the CLIPS program. So in the case of Astrobotic, we have 16 signed customers, and that's a collection of companies, governments, universities, nonprofits from around the world. In fact, across that manifest, it represents about 6 countries. And I think what's amazing about that is that's true organic demand that we're seeing outside of NASA and outside of CLIPS. So we really, we're very grateful for NASA's leadership in instituting CLIPS, but it's also important to note that it's not just NASA that's engaging in these programs. And that's really, I think, goes to show the demand that we're seeing in the US and abroad for lunar science and exploration. I think a big reason for that has been we're kind of fundamentally changing how a space science mission is done in a few different ways. One, no longer is it just one boutique planetary mission that can occur. With this model, you're able to just buy the capacity that you need, and you can do it over and over again at a low cost. Going to various different locations on the moon, not just one location. So all of those sort of factors have really changed the dynamic, allowing a whole variety of new constituencies around the world to engage in lunar science and exploration, where maybe in the past they didn't have the capability to build a launch vehicle and a spacecraft and a payload. By buying just service that they need from US companies, they're able to get their payloads to the surface. And there's a lot of sophisticated science and exploration communities around the world that can do so. And this really kind of creates that gateway for them.
Great, thank you, Dan. Mark and Alan, organizations like the Lunar Exploration Analysis Group, the League that was mentioned in the earlier video, and Bryce Space have studied or promoted lunar markets and commercialization potential. There's agreement on the potential commercial viability of lunar volatiles used for fuel and other things. Why is NASA promoting commercial activity on the moon, and what kind of benefits will arise in the near term? Mark?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think commercial activities are complementary to NASA's exploration objectives. Commercial activities will benefit from NASA's efforts with exploration, and similarly, exploration will benefit from commercial opportunities. In the end, if the goal, as we've talked about, is a sustained presence, what's key is a commercial model with true underlying economic benefit. And I think that's the reason we see NASA looking so strongly to the commercial sector to help go to the moon in a complementary manner.
I agree.
And I'll just add, I think that the introduction of commercial lunar economy and commercial outfits to lunar exploration is really a game changer. It reminds me of the way that the PC revolution changed computing from something that was rare to routine, and at the same time that computing exploded in terms of proliferation, costs dropped and capabilities increased. And we see very much the same thing taking place across the commercial space spectrum. So bringing that now to lunar exploration, I think is, as I said, going to be a game changer. It's going to lower costs, it's going to increase innovation, and maybe most importantly, it's going to be able to leverage what NASA does, bringing new resources to the table so that we can get more done more quickly and really become a spacefaring nation and species in new ways.
And those are really good points. And I think the model that we're seeing with the lander, where NASA is an enabler to promote the development of these landers, but having an expectation of the commercialization, that industry will be able to determine ways where there can be a business case, and Dynetics and other companies can continue to provide transportation and services on the lunar surface to enable that is a great model. Thank you. Mark, I'd like to follow up a little bit. Can you talk about the launch performance ULA's new Vulcan Centaur rocket will bring to the mission to return Americans to the moon? And how will markets ensure a sustained interest in the lunar region?
Sure. So Vulcan Centaur is the Dynetics HLS ride to the moon, basically. And we're making really good progress. So Vulcan Centaur draws upon all of our experience with Atlas and Delta, both systems and actual hardware, as well as bringing in new technology. And we've been able to achieve very high performance in the Vulcan Centaur launch system to what we call heavy class performance in a single stick rocket. So performance that we traditionally would see in a 3-body vehicle like a Delta IV, we're able to accomplish in that single core booster with Vulcan Centaur. And so really high performance to support the demanding requirements of the Dynetics HLS lunar mission. We've done that through a number of innovations. One of those is building upon our history with the Centaur upper stage that served us so well on Atlas and Titan. We have a next generation Centaur upper stage that offers a 2.5 times increase in the total impulse it offers in that high performing LOX hydrogen architecture. And so that's really important. That's one of the key elements of being able to fly this very challenging mission from both a performance standpoint, as well as just the basic mission as it unfolds and we support deployment of the Dynetics payloads.
Great. Thank you, Mark. So we have some audience questions that have come in, and I'm going to read one. If NASA makes an SLS Block 1B human-rated rocket available for the 2024 mission, how would you be able to utilize that rocket for Orion and the roughly 10 to 11 additional metric tons remaining for cargo space? Could you complete the mission with one Block 1B and one added commercial rocket? So I'd be happy to make a few comments on that question and see if any of the rest of the audience would like to. The SLS Block 1B is obviously will be a very capable rocket. We have not studied the specifics of how that could be utilized, but additional upmass is always a great opportunity, and I know that the Orion spacecraft could benefit from the additional capabilities of a Block 1B rocket. So I'm sure if the SLS was available, we would make good use of that as well as the Vulcan Centaur. Would anyone else in the panel like to comment on that? Okay, thank you, audience. So I have another question for George. George, what are your thoughts on how commercial activity around the moon will create opportunities for science? Is there money to be made, or is that not the point?
So really, space scientists and commercial space companies, we actually have a common goal, and that is to find these viable resources that can be extracted from the moon, and to use them to establish a sustained infrastructure in and around the moon so that we can venture to Mars and beyond. The growth of the commercial space industry is actually a boon for science, as there are companies, as these companies become innovators in providing access to space at reduced cost and developing new methods of exploration, and through this advanced scientific knowledge as well. The commercial sector enables science as well by building equipment and providing the platforms to space, like the CLIPS program, by carrying, deploying, and returning data from our instruments, and providing an alternative source of funding even to conduct our research. As these companies grow and push the boundaries of what is known, and it is in their interest actually to invest in science so that we can sort of secure their own profit, their own resources, and also to discover the potential for other resources. And of course, then there are several other things that are outside the scope of my ability to predict. But so in this way, space exploration as a business will actually advance and enable science. As to whether there's money to be made, and if that's really a good question, I say absolutely. There is money to be made from commercial activity on and around the moon. Governments may be the biggest client for decades to come, but there are myriad opportunities for businesses to make money while we continue exploring, identifying and extracting resources. Commercial space is an emerging market with opportunities and possibilities, many of which we have yet to even conceive of. So making money may not be the point for governments or even for most scientists, but it is for business, and that's good for establishing a sustained market.
Thank you, George. And I think we're hearing a lot here that robotics, human spaceflight, commercial endeavors, science, they all really go hand in hand. And I think that's an important message, that all are important and there's room for all of those. So I appreciate that. We have another audience question. There's a lot of focus on reducing cost and increasing sustainability. Is Dynetics working reuse into the plan for their lander, and what parts will be reusable? Absolutely. In fact, we designed the human lander for the 2024 mission to have an integrated ascent descent element, the crew module that you saw in the mock-up, as well as the alpaca. That integrated ascent descent unit is reusable. Everything we take down to the surface of the moon can be reused. The 2024 mission, we're focusing on taking the first crew to the surface of the moon, but we're exploring even with that particular lander whether there would be uses for it after the first mission. But the lander will be reusable and sustainable. And we think that's important. As you saw, there are a lot of things we want to do on the surface of the moon. There needs to be a lot of capability to get everything down there to return samples to the Gateway or to Orion. And so that's been a real key of our design from the beginning. Okay, Dan and Alan, I'd like to talk about international partners. NASA is broadly pursuing partnerships with traditional and emerging space agencies. How important is it for the U.S. to continue to lead expeditions to the moon and to partner with other countries? Dan, your thoughts?
Sure, I think it's absolutely essential. I think what's been remarkable is that the U.S. Commercial sector has kind of captured a majority market share of lunar payload delivery sales. And what we're seeing is that the U.S. is really becoming the primary conduit for getting access to the surface for cargo, and now with the Human Lander program for getting crews to the surface. And as a result of that, I think we're seeing an ecosystem that's starting to build. You have other countries around the world that are stepping up and planning to make contributions to that ecosystem. There's folks that want to build rovers and habitats, for example. And those sort of contributions, I think, are essential because no one country can do that by themselves. I think the risk is that if the U.S. were to walk away from that leadership, there's two sort of effects that could happen. In the immediate term, I think it would cut off access to the moon, cut off access for the market, as well as for getting crews to the surface. And that's obviously a detrimental setback for the entire exploration community around the world. And then in the medium term, I think there's a risk that the world will move on without the U.S. There's other countries that I think could potentially lead those sorts of exploration expeditions going in the future. And I think there's a real danger that if the U.S. were to cede that leadership, that there'd be others that would pick up the torch pretty quickly. I think we have examples from history, for example, where aviation, for example, was invented in the U.S., but over time, in the very beginning of that sector, the U.S. ceded leadership in developing follow-on developments in aviation, and there were other countries that stepped up and took that torch away from the U.S. And it took years for the U.S. to regain that leadership role. So I think it's really essential that the U.S. continue to lead both commercially as well as on this crewed lander, and the Dynetics Human Lander System is a perfect example of how to lead there.
Thank you. Alan, you've got a lot of experience and a lot of history in the space arena. I'm interested in your thoughts on the international participation and how important it is for the U.S. to continue to lead expeditions to the moon.
Absolutely. Well, I think Dan said it very well, and I agree with all of the points that he made. I think they were spot on. The United States has to lead, in my view. Not to make a space pun, but we don't want to see the lunar vacuum filled only with competitor nations leading. We want to lead. And beyond our leadership, it's important to point out, it's just a fact that the United States has the most capable space exploration capability and the most vibrant commercial space sector on the planet, on Earth. So if we cede the moon to others and don't lead, then we're going to lose both of those frontline capabilities. But I think it's also important to point out that while we should lead, we should not go alone. There are something like 194 nations on the face of this planet, and only about 20% of them have spaceflight capabilities today. But with the Artemis system, the United States will be able to take, in principle, experiments, possibly crew, and do other applications on the lunar surface with virtually every nation on the Earth. And we can make the exploration of space something that is truly internationalized on a massive scale, that is ubiquitous across all of the nations of the Earth if the U.S. leads.
Thank you, Alan. It's exciting to think about leading all the like-minded countries in the world uniting together for space exploration. It's also sobering to think about the alternatives if we aren't a leader. So I appreciate those comments. Thank you. So I've got one for all of our panelists. We all know there have been many attempts to start lunar exploration efforts over the last 30 years. Why will we succeed this time? And how important is it that we do succeed? So Alan, why don't you go ahead and take that one first?
Sure, absolutely, happy to. Well, first, I think it's crucial that we succeed this time. But I'm also much more optimistic than in the past. We have a tremendous head start in the Artemis program in the development of Orion and SLS, and now for the first time, the development of a human landing system capability. So of the three elements that we need, the big rocket, the crew vehicle to get back and forth from Earth to Moon, and the lander, two of them are very far along in development and have already had some test flight experience. And that's something we never enjoyed in previous attempts to go back to the moon and begin its exploration with humans again. So that makes me much more optimistic. The other aspect that makes me much more optimistic than in the past is the very commercial partnerships that we've been talking about, because they really leverage what NASA can do, as I said earlier, and they provide additional support, financial as well as political support. And they also add a new element of innovation that we didn't have in past efforts to return to the moon. So as I said, I'm extremely optimistic, and I think this is going to work out in a fantastic way.
Great, thank you. Mark, I heard the word big rocket in there. How about if you share your thoughts next?
Yeah, sure. I'm certainly very optimistic as well. I think it's unprecedented in the level of interest we have from both private and commercial entities to complement our government's initiatives. And I think that will serve us very well in our lunar exploration initiatives. And the other part of here with commercial is that there's viable economic models as well to continue to drive the commercial market. The other part of the question you asked is, can we afford not to succeed? And I think in the long term, the answer is no. And we talked about all the reasons for maintaining U.S. leadership in space and how that benefits us here on Earth. But really, exploration in cislunar and on the moon is key to solving a lot of really challenging problems we have here on the surface of the Earth, long-term problems that don't have easy answers overnight. But whether that's coming up with ways to generate safe, clean power to support us on the surface of the Earth, obtaining materials that are becoming more scarce here on the surface of the Earth and mining those from near-Earth objects or the surface of the moon or wherever it may be in cislunar, or moving manufacturing or other operations like that off the surface of the Earth. Our exploration initiatives in cislunar on the moon can have a profound effect on life here on Earth and really solve some very challenging problems that we face in the decades to come. And so, my answer is we can't afford not to be successful, and I think we're on a great start.
Thank you, and that's really important to remember. Besides the excitement of what we can do on the lunar surface, the benefits here on Earth can't be predicted, but we know they're there. George, how about you? What makes you more optimistic that we can do it this time?
Well, I actually started I came into the field when Constellation was kind of, starting to go and then stopped. So I can't really say whether I can be more optimistic about this than previously, because this is kind of like really my first experience at this huge buildup. But it certainly does look promising, and I do believe that having the commercial sector option or capability or partnership, is a better way of securing it. And also, I just wanted to say that, everybody here is talking about the, how we need to be a leader, to the world and everything, and yet do everything with the world, and how people will, or how other countries may view us. I also want to just remind them that it's also how our own people view their country. And this country, the U.S., we've been pioneers, we've been pushing forward, we're explorers, and this is something that's been an inspiration for its people. I mean, everybody I have met in my entire life, when people ask me, what do you do? I've met one person who didn't care. Everybody else is just like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. People love space, and it's an inspiration and a motivator for children and for adults. So that's why I think it's important that we do this. It's our exploration. It's our future.
Great, thank you. Jack, how about your thoughts?
Yeah, Kim, this is not my first rodeo when it comes to this kind of exploration of the moon. It's my third time around here, and I really want this to succeed. What's different from the Constellation system probably 12 years or so ago was that was a large, big government program. And what has changed in the 12 years or so is the public-private partnerships we were just talking about. And we have a number of companies now that are capable of commercializing space, whether it's launched to low Earth orbit, launched to the moon, or in this case, commercial landers. Imagine 12 years ago talking about the idea of a commercial lander for the moon. That just wasn't on anybody's mind. So that really has changed dramatically. The other thing that's changed is the number of countries and companies now going to the moon, having that capability. Not everybody has been successful. A number have been, though, and that's opened up a wide playing field of international partnerships that wasn't there before. So I think we've crossed a threshold now in which people can see that a lunar program like this is sustainable, will go with a combination of companies, governments, US and abroad to make this work. So I too am optimistic that we will make it work this time.
Great, thank you. And Dan, I saved you for last. We've heard about commercial companies being a key part of our success this time. So can you share your thoughts?
Yeah, I heartily agree with the views of the panelists just voiced. I think astrobotics is actually an interesting example of exactly what's different now than maybe has been in the past. So for example, we actually started as a company right around the time that the Constellation program was canceled. And we've been around for about 13 years now. And we've been going without an Artemis or any similar program like that. And I like to joke that sometimes sandwich shops can't even last 13 years. So if there's a commercial moon company like us that can thrive now 13 years into this industry, I think that really has a great marker for looking ahead for Artemis and programs going to the moon, because there really is a new ecosystem of companies, and we're proof positive of that. And I think also when I look at, for example, the Dynetics Human Lander System, baking into that program commercial sustainability is something that just was not present, I think, in prior programs. So that's another sure marker, I think, of what's different.
Thank you, Dan. I think all of the panelists brought up really important points as to why we're optimistic that we'll be on the moon with these landers, with all of the science and exploration activities that we've talked about, government and industry partnership, science and commercialization, international relationships, all very important, and it's exciting. It is exciting, and again, we appreciate that NASA has set a goal. This isn't a someday thing, this is a very soon thing. So very exciting, very optimistic. We have time for a couple more audience questions. Let's see, how does the Dynetics lander integrate the international cooperation to come back to the moon and establish the International Moon Village? So I'll open it up for any panelists, and then I'll add a few comments as well. Would anyone like to address that?
Well, let me say a word or two about the Moon Village, because I think it's an exciting concept that goes back a few years now by the Director General of ESA, who's been promoting really the idea as a permanent presence on the moon. So going beyond just the flags and footsteps that we saw with Apollo to a kind of sustainable program, very much what we've been echoing today. So the fact that we see this kind of bold vision coming from ESA, along with from Japan, from India, China, other countries that developing the moon is a goal, is a natural stepping stone to exploring the rest of the solar system. So I like the idea of whether or not, you know, a moon village per se materializes. It's the thought, it's the idea, it's the gathering an international community together on the moon that's really part of what I think the Director General is trying to say.
And I'll just add, I think that what the Dynetics lander does for us is all of the key ingredients that you need to be able to imagine putting a lunar village or a lunar outpost in place. It gives us the capability to send mass there, and that allows us to pre-position resources. It allows us to send the construction crews there and the exploration crews there, and to return them and to return samples, to bring the experiments that we want to do on the lunar surface, to bring the commercial entities that will do everything from resource recovery and mining to in situ resource utilization. So I think the Dynetics lander is the key to that lock. It really opens up the ability to imagine a lunar outpost, a lunar village, if you will, as a real capability and a real place that will be open for business, if you will, later in the 20s or at the beginning of the next decade.
Great. I appreciate that. And I think the video that Kathy Larini narrated that showed an idea of how the lunar surface can be populated, how habitats, resource utilization activities, power systems, communication systems can eventually be built on the lunar surface. It's going to require international cooperation, as the panelists have mentioned here. And one of the things on the Dynetics Human Lander System that we tried to do was look across industry and figure out what companies were really good at doing things. And we brought all those companies together to contribute their experience and their expertise. As was mentioned, Thales Alenia is providing the crew module structure for us because they have a lot of experience there. I think similarly, many countries have space experience, as was mentioned, and we're going to need everybody to come up there and contribute to lunar economy, a moon base, and so it's a big, challenging activity, and the world is going to need to come together to do that, so very important. Let's see, another question from the audience. Given the boil-off issues involving cryogenic propellants, how closely spaced must the Vulcan Centaur launches be to ensure there's enough propellant available for transfer to the lander? So our plan has the Vulcan Centaur launches on 14 to 20 day centers. And Mark, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah, we're all set up and preparing the launch system to be able to support that cadence out of the Cape, and on track to do that.
Great, and we've worked closely with NASA on our concept of operations and the Orion plans to ensure that our operational scenario is viable and feasible, and we're excited to have the Vulcan support us with that. Okay, I have another question for everybody. What advice can you give to young men and women who want to enter the space industry? And are companies searching for young engineers? And how can they come in and contribute? Mark, we've got you up there on the screen. Would you like to address that first?
Sure. There's tons of opportunity out there at all of our companies and well beyond. It's opportunity like there hasn't been for decades. I think the important thing when you start out is to be flexible and to be realistic. I think a lot of people start out and they think that they want to be sitting in front of a CAD terminal designing the architecture themselves for the next lunar lander or the next rocket. And everyone needs to understand that they need to get their foot in the door. They need to be flexible about where they start. And most important is they really need to be open to establishing a diverse set of experiences, really a portfolio that they can build upon. And that will really help develop them and provide for a really vibrant career.
Thank you. George, do you have some thoughts for young people?
I'm a scientist, so With respect to like the space companies anyway, I think that they're mostly focused on engineers and hiring engineers, but it does seem like there are a lot of opportunities for engineers. I look forward to them wanting to hire scientists. But yeah, if you are interested in science, there should be coming up a lot of interest or need for planetary scientists, not just lunar, hopefully Mars scientists. So especially if you are very young, if you still have a good 10 or 12 years of education left, then maybe you should start focusing that way.
Good advice. Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, I'd like to chip in on this one. Thank you. You know, what I tell people is very simple. What I'd like to tell young people is follow your heart. Do what excites you most, because we need all kinds of skills in space exploration. We need crazy numbers of engineers, and we need the scientists, as George was just talking about, but we need lots of other skill sets. So if you're not into engineering and science, maybe you're into public communications, marketing. Maybe you're into the business side. We need lots of people on the business side. And we need medical people. And we need people that can turn wrenches and be those expert technicians that actually build what the engineers design. We need flight controllers. And we need people who help recover the crews, whether it's in the ocean or on land. There are just a crazy number of different types of career paths that help contribute to space exploration. So for young people who want to get involved in it, find the thing that's most exciting to you and go after it, and then use that skill set to help join us and make the 21st century the century of space exploration. We need all of you.
Great. Thank you, Alan. Jack, anything you'd like to add?
I would, as the person who actually educates students, young people in the university, I find a couple of interesting things. First is the enthusiasm that the young people have for space is really grown dramatically over the last decade. And it's not that everybody wants to go to work for NASA, a lot of people do, but also they're excited by what's happening in the commercial sector and seeing what those opportunities are. And we are seeing a broad range of, as Alan was saying, people of different backgrounds. The class I'm teaching this semester on space exploration, well, I've got business majors now, I've got physicists, I've got aerospace engineers, I've got people who, you know, across the range that see there are opportunities for them to jump into this area. Furthermore, ones that I have in my lab, I have a telerobotics lab in which we're developing robots to work to assemble things like radio telescopes on the lunar surface. And they're getting hands-on experience. We're trying to operate in much the same way as companies do. And we have executives from the companies who are partners in our NASA-funded center come to campus regularly, guide the students, get involved. And it's a wonderful environment in Colorado in that we have so many aerospace companies and executives who are willing to work with us. So it's a new environment, it's an exciting one, and you know, the kids today, I think, see that there's a brand new potential. This is not your grandfather's space program that we're looking at anymore. This is a new space program, a new way of doing things.
Thank you. Thank you. Dan, would you like to add some thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would just add that it's okay to pivot. I learned that early on in my career. I started out doing engineering and then pivoted to business development. And so, as Alan said, follow your heart. And as Mark said, be flexible. You might enter your career field thinking that you're going to do one thing, but it's okay to pivot to something different once you learn what you like and you get the experience in the field.
Thank you.
Can I add one more thing, actually? So it was something that Jack and Alan both said inspired this, made me think this, that you know, diversity in career is absolutely needed, but also diversity in culture, because diversity in culture is what actually brings innovation. It's people who think differently about things, think of things in a different way, that is what brings innovation, and that is going to make this even more successful. So whatever your background, go for it. Try, do. If you like it, if you want to, please, we want you. Space wants you, really.
Thank you, George. That's really important. That's a very good point. And I've been in the aerospace business for almost 37 years, and I'm just sad that I probably don't have another 37 because, as Jack mentioned, when we look at the potential, all of the things that we've talked about here today in terms of exploration and science and commercialization, the next 30, 40 years are going to be extremely exciting. And so I'm envious of all of the young men and women who are listening today, because you've got a really bright opportunity ahead. Let's see. Another question from the audience. Does Dynetics have plans for an uncrewed demonstration flight of the Dynetics HLS before Artemis 3, and what would that test flight entail? Yes, we do. We have put together a plan that will demonstrate all of the critical functions of the lander. We will demonstrate in-orbit refueling of the lander. We'll demonstrate all the systems that are needed to land and take back off the lunar surface. And so we'll check everything out before we put a crew on that lander. Let's see, I've got a question here that I will be lucky to be able to read correctly, let alone answer. Perhaps Alan, Jack, or George, do you think it might be time to update the geological magnum opus terrestrial basalts published by SWSI LPI in the 80s in the light of what we will learn with upcoming systematic examination of lunar basalts and later Martian basalts? So, George, would you like to comment?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
I'll just add that I'm not a geochemist or a lunar geochemist, but one of the things that we've learned in this renewed era of lunar exploration that's been taking place since the early 2000s is just how much richer lunar science is. And we've made at least a half a dozen major discoveries that have changed our view of the moon, its origin and evolution in just the last 2 decades. And I think that with the capabilities that we're going to see Artemis bring to the lunar surface, that's going to go, as I said earlier, into warp drive. So I think everything about the lunar, our understanding of lunar science is going to get rewritten ultimately. And we need to update those books of all types as those results come forward and the older literature becomes out of date.
Great. Jack, would you like to comment?
I don't have much more to comment because I'm not a geologist, but I would just say, echoing a little bit of what Alan said, is that I'm really excited to open up that history book that is the moon. There's 4.5 billion years of history encoded, and it's encoded in a lot of places we haven't been to yet, particularly the far side, the South Pole Lake and Basin, bringing back samples from a time period that really we can't gather any data on from the Earth is really going to be important. So, fully opening up that history book with Apollo, we just sort of went into the introduction. We want to open it up and read the full book of the life history of the Earth-Moon system.
Great, thank you. And mentioning the history books, I think it's also exciting for everybody listening today and the country, the world, to realize that we're on the verge of writing new history books about lunar exploration. As we've talked about, the Dynetics lander, we believe will offer the opportunity to help develop this lunar community, the lunar architecture, and we're very pleased to be a part of this. And at this point, I'd like to thank our panelists. Thank you very much for your time, your valuable insight during today's panel. Certainly thought-provoking and exciting to think about what the future holds. And I appreciate the audience for joining us today to discuss lunar exploration and utilization and what a sustainable lander can do for us. So now I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll close with a word from some of our executive leaders. Thank you very much.
I hope that today's overview of our program and design has helped you to understand the strategy and the passion that have gone into our HLS design. Our team is working extremely hard to bring NASA's vision to life, and we're incredibly grateful for the more than 25 companies who share our vision for the future of human-rated spaceflight. Dynetics is excited to land Americans on the moon, and we're glad to be a part of this story.
United Launch Alliance has supported some of the most complex launches in history. The Dynetics Lunar mission will be sustainable and versatile. Our industry-recognized expertise, world-leading schedule certainty, and unmatched record of 100% mission success will help the team put more human footprints on the lunar surface by 2024.
SNC has more than 450 missions to space under our belt, including successful voyages to every planet in the solar system. We bring critical innovation and experience to the development of the Dynetics HLS crew module. Our crew spacecraft expertise, including our design and development of Dream Chaser, makes us a strong partner. We are so excited to be part of this great team going to the moon together.
Hi, I'm Dan Jablonski, CEO of Maxar Technologies. Maxar will deliver a broad range of space infrastructure solutions that enable power, communications, robotics, and thermal control for the Dynetics Human Landing System. We are incredibly excited to once again partner with this talented team of experts as they support NASA's Artemis program.
We are thrilled to be part of history in the making, joining Dynetics and this outstanding group of technology experts to harmonize and accomplish a most critical mission. Paragon brings decades of innovation in life support and thermal control to the mission.
Oceaneering is proud to join the Dynetics Human Landing System team, providing spacesuit system support and training experience for the women and men exploring the next frontier. Establishing and maintaining a human presence on the moon will be a most extraordinary feat.
Space exploration has played a critical role in our lives here on Earth. 51 years ago, our nation stood with bated breath, watching as the Apollo crew exited their lunar lander and took their first steps on the moon. More than half a century later, visiting other planetary bodies is still equally exciting, and we are proud to play a role in landing the first woman and the next man on the lunar surface. These efforts are crucial in establishing and maintaining a stable lunar economy, and we are incredibly proud to be so engaged with such a worthwhile, innovative mission. We extend our warmest thanks to all who took time from their busy schedules to join us for today's webinar. It has been an honor to be among such accomplished individuals. Thank you for your contributions to our nation's exciting next adventure.